again. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Bharadari Jaya Gopi Jana Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, we're going to be reading from text 103 to 110. I'm just going to read the verse in the translation altogether. Sedui Prabhura Kari Charana Vandana Yahaha Ite Vignanasa Avishta Purana. Let us therefore worship the holy feet of these two lords. Thus one can be rid of all difficulties on the path of self-realization. Edui shloke kaila mangala vandana tritiya shlokera artha shuna sarvajana. I have invoked the benediction of the Lords with these two verses, text 1 and 2 of this chapter. Now please hear attentively the purport of the third verse. Vaktavya bahulya granta vishtare radare vishtare na varni sarartha kahi alpakshare. I purposely avoid extensive description for fear of increasing the bulk of this book. I shall describe the essence as concisely as possible. Mittam cha saram cha vacho hi vidmita iti. Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. Sunile kandi bechitera ajnana didosha Krishna gada pre mahabe paibe santosha. Simply hearing submissively will free one's heart from all the faults of ignorance, and thus one will achieve deep love for Krishna. This is the path of peace. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Advaita Mahatva Tanra Bhakta Bhakti Nama Prema Rasa Tattva Bina Binna Likya Chikariya Vichara Sunile Jani Besa Bhavashtu Tattvasara. If one patiently hears about the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Advaita Prabhu, and their devotees, devotional activities, names, and fame, along with their mellows of their transcendental loving exchanges, one will learn the essence of the absolute truth. Therefore, I have described these in the Chaitanya Charitamrita with logic and discrimination. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Padayara Asa Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prasharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, starting from text 103, Prabhupada has explained in the first, So these are the last few. Is it on live? Is it all okay?
Yeah, you forgot to make the translation of the last one.
I did?
You said the praise before you pressed the translation.
Sorry, I didn't mention the translation of text 110. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunatha, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Dasa, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Sorry. So these are the last few verses in the first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada says that one comes to Chaitanya Charitamrita after they have come to the point of surrender to Krishna. That is, that all their, they do not seeking happiness or seeking even self-realization through the other forms of yoga, whether it is hatha yoga or karma yoga or jnana yoga. Once they are done with all of that and they are not interested and they've come to the point of bhakti, realizing this is the real path, or the path that really works in this age, they come to study Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it is for one who has given up all other pursuits of understanding and even enjoying, like, even with Bhagavad Gita, it's the book that Prabhupada recommended. It is for everybody, it is for everybody, and it's a Vedic text meant for everybody to understand, and it gives the information about the body, the soul, how the relationship is, and the relationship with the Ishvara, how the material energy works, Prakriti, the time and activities. So once they have learned all that, they will come to a point at the very end of Bhagavad Gita to surrender. Surrender means like, I am going to begin my life now that I know who I am and what is my, and my relationship to God. And for a lot of, for devotees, for the impersonalists, this is where they kind of, at this point, they kind of accept it. They accept that Krishna or God is an impersonal idea. They believe that there's the golden effulgence. But for a devotee, this is where their real question begins. And they even address this golden effulgence in the 15th, in the Ishopanishad 15th verse, where they pray to Krishna. Hiranmayena patrena satyashyapi hitam mukam tattvam pushan apavrino satya dharmaya drishtaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So devotees aspiring to go beyond that, and they want to see the person, God, and they want to have a relationship. Most scriptures in the world, they will stop at telling that God is very kind, He's amazing, He's great, He's very wise, and He's the controller. But it is only Vaishnava scriptures, literature, that will describe further how you can have a relationship with God, how you can have this, what is the nature of this relationship, and which is why Chaitanya Charitamrita it's one of those texts that explains. There's so much information about the different relationships Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, how they have their different, how they exchange this loving exchanges between them, and how even they express their moods, whether it's anger or love or in any way or form. It is all very transcendental, and it's nice. We get a glimpse of what that kind of exchanges. And also it is Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami gives the philosophy of or the science behind these relationships. So what is the nature and how to get there. So that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, he says in 103 that we worship them, these two lords, Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they get rid of the difficulties on the path of self-realization. They remove these obstacles that we will face, and also they fulfill one's desires, Abhishta Parana. So that is how he started with 103. And then as he moves on to 104 to 105, he so in 103, yes, so he worships both of them. And then in 105, in 105 and 106, he says he tries to write the Chaitanya Charitamrita very, he doesn't add too many details, but he wants to present the philosophy, and he keeps it very succinct. And we have to understand that Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami was in his 80s when he began writing this book, and it was an instruction that he got from his guru, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, yes, and we have to understand that Raghunath Das Goswami learned all the pastimes about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Swarup Damodar Goswami, who was one of the two, Murari Gupta, who recorded Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, the first half, and Swarup Damodar recorded the second half. So he learned everything, memorized everything, had it in his heart, Raghunath Das Goswami did. And so after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Swarup Damodar Maharaj left this world, he was totally heartbroken, and he felt that was really, out of separation. He couldn't bear living, and so he wanted to commit suicide, wanted to jump off the Govardhan hill and commit suicide. And it is when he met Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatan Goswami, and they instructed him, whatever that you know, please share it with everybody. And which is why he empowered Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami to write it, and he transferred to him the whole the knowledge and the potency to write this extraordinary work. And so Kaviraj Goswami, he acknowledges that, and he does so at every end of every chapter. He's always paying his obeisances and asking for the mercy of his guru, Srila Rupa Goswami, as well as Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. You okay, Anasuya? And he does this at the end of every chapter. But we also know that in the beginning of this chapter, he also addressed all the spiritual masters. He says, I pray for the mercy of my spiritual masters. He uses a plural, and he is referring to all the acharyas in the parampara. And we can see that he is saying that this knowledge of understanding the pastimes and the philosophy, it is not merely book learning, and we need to get the blessings of the previous acharya to let it known to us what it is. And he sets by his example that we have to understand, again, he is in his 80s, and he also mentions in the book that he is so old that his hand is trembling while he's writing, and he is almost blind. But at the same time, it is a wonder to him that that he's able to write. So we can see that this is extraordinary mercy, and that is transferred down, that he has given us such an amazing work. And also, as an example that how we really need to acknowledge the previous acharyas in our service. And then between text 107 to 109, he talks about, he tells us the benefit of actually reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita and studying it. And he says that when you study Chaitanya Charitamrita in those verses, that all your nescience or your ignorance will be removed. Your understanding of everything, material and spiritual, will become more clear, will be revealed. And when you get that, you will tend to, he says, you would understand the essence of the absolute truth. You will know exactly who Krishna is, who's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, what his pastimes, and like I mentioned earlier, the relationships between all of them. We would understand that more better, and then we would eventually develop deep love for Krishna and attain satisfaction. So he gives these as the benefit of studying Chaitanya Charitamrita. Well, and so we do try, and we try to pray that we will get the mercy and we will have the benefit as he has promised us. Now, for most of us, this is sometimes quite difficult to see. How is this spiritual knowledge is actually going to help us with our material problems. And it's like the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's so much detail into the different personalities, the different misunderstandings, the way they exchange affection, and also the humor, the anger, how there's so much of these stories in there. And how is this actually helping us with our problems, because we have to live here and we face all kinds of problems all the time. So how does studying this yagya of studying the Bhagavad Gita, studying the Bhagavatam, studying the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and how does it help us to deal with our problems? And we face all kinds of problems. We have physical problems, we have emotional, mental, financial problems. We are all, in various ways, we are all struggling. So how is studying these scriptures actually help? Like he says, so I'll come back to it, but how does it help? And the thing is, when we are living here and when we are trying to face our difficulties and our problems, we are always trying to find a material solution to our material problems. And this is how it's been forever, and this is how people always seek to solve. And it is true. I mean, if a child falls down or if we get hurt, we need to deal with it immediately, and then we will the example I'm trying to give is, if a child falls down and hurts his knee, so what we would generally do is try and try and bandage the knee and make the child feel better before we can explain, maybe you should have tied your shoelace on before you started running, then you wouldn't have fallen. So we have to deal with the situation immediately before we try to understand why it happened. So that is true. But in that way, yes, we do have to get material solution, but we have to do a little bit more. And for example, is um, like when I was doing my doctorate, I was also doing a part-time job with the Birmingham Hindu Council, and I was working as a youth worker. And part of my job was to try and organize different kind of um, projects or different kind of things to help with the youths on different things, whether it's a sports activity or so. One of it was anti-smoking campaign. So I organized, and we went to different groups, Hindu groups, communities in Birmingham, and I'll set up, and we will have youths anywhere between 15 to 25-year-olds. They would attend in universities as well, and it would all be about anti-smoking. Now, the smoking problem was really bad now about almost 20 years ago, I think. But even among girls, it was a real problem at the time. And so in my presentation, I'm giving them the knowledge how smoking is bad for you, what it does to your health, and what is the agenda of the tobacco industry, how they try to market cigarettes from, in certain parts in the third world countries, they would actually distribute cigarettes for free to the 10-year-olds because they feel if they can get them at a younger age, then they have about 40 or 50 years long customer than having to advertise to a 20-year-old, because once the children are hooked, they can't give it up. So I was just trying to put different, things into to them, and for girls, how the effect of smoking really, I had pictures of what it does after 6 months, a year, and to their complexion, to their hair, their teeth, and trying to persuade them to see that there's really no good to smoking, and that the results, it didn't make much of a change. Even if you give, even if they know this is wrong, and you throw all this information, the statistics and the numbers, and it didn't make very much difference. And the numbers kept rising. It was something else that they were addicted to after that. So they didn't quite address the issue or solve the problem. And then let's look at people who are having other kinds of problems, like those who are depressed, who suffer greatly. Their thought process is always about what should have happened, why it didn't happen, and if it did happen, how it would have been, and how could things have changed, and who should have made those changes, who is at fault. And their thought is always around what could have been, and it hurts them that things hasn't changed. Now their mind is constantly engrossed in these thoughts, so much so that it's actually quite painful, and so they are suffering. Depression is a form of suffering, and they're really suffering in pain because they can't see out. I mean, the time can move forward and everybody could be moving on with their lives, but a person who is depressed is pretty much stuck many years behind because they haven't resolved this issue, and it's dragging them down. And then again, like with people who are suffer with, say, addiction to alcohol, to drugs, or to anything, and experts would tell you that it is not the thing itself that is causing them an addiction. It is more of because it doesn't cause addiction to everybody. The item of food or alcohol, other people eat it, drink it, and they are not addicted. So the item itself is not causing addiction, but the people who are addicted have a certain propensity, and it's because they're dealing with another level of pain, and the pain, or the source of the pain could vary many ways. It could be because they didn't have maybe they experience a certain traumatic relationship, or they didn't have certain affection, and or certain, so many things can go wrong in our lives in our younger years. So all of that, if it's not properly resolved, it's dwelling in our hearts, and it is causing a lot of pain. And so to numb this pain, they resort to taking anything and everything, because these things that they are eating or drinking, they are practically numbing their pain. They're painkillers. So again, I wanted to show by example in every other form that they are struggling with pain. And we know that there is a lot of answers, like the study of human behavior and the brain. They could see how these kinds of pain are dealt in a different way. One is of trying to reason with them, cognitive behavioral therapy, where you try and reason with them, and you try and, if you can alter their perception of their problem or break their habit of resorting to taking certain thing, and they could change. They would adopt. It would make sense if I could tell you that this is wrong and this is not how you should be. You could look at the problem in a different way. Naturally a person would change. But we know from if you look at any rehab centers, they will tell you the average of any success rate in rehabs are 10, if not 15%, not more. And not a lot of them don't quite make it through. So there's a lot of and there's the experts, a lot of them are, they are very compassionate. They really do feel the suffering of the people, and they really do try and really extend themselves, and they really try to help and really try to speak to them and give them the time and to try and help. But not much is actually happening, or the changes that you're expecting to see doesn't quite take place. So why is that? Why is that when the answers are right there in front of them, and they have people who are really trying to reach out to them, they cannot respond in the right way? Why is it? And we have answers, and we can look for answers in the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Now Dhruva Maharaj is for him, his whole dilemma started when he wanted to sit on his father's lap, and his stepmother asked him to leave. Like, you don't belong on the king's lap, because you were not born from my womb. So it was his stepmother who was the queen, whereas his mother was not. And so that really hurt his feelings. So he is upset here, like he is really upset that he's been insulted by his stepmother. But what really threw him off the edge was that his father didn't do anything either. The father just stood there and just sat there watching everything, and that really pierced his heart. That really hurt him and got him really, really angry. So now he's angry, and he goes to his mother, and he's expressing to her, what do I do? What do I do? I'm so angry that I want something greater than what this kingdom is. I want greater than this. I want greater than anybody has it. And his mother, Suniti, she says, whatever your father has, Uttanapad, whatever Brahma has, your grandfather, whatever they got was given to them by Vishnu. So if you want something greater, you should go to Vishnu. And it's very interesting to really think about it, because she has, two things. One is Dhruva Maharaj, he had a certain desire, he didn't get it, he got angry, and now he's in a state of an emotion of anger. So how did he act on this anger? He went to look for an answer. And when he approached his mother, and he was lucky enough to get a mother like her to give him the right instruction to go and approach Vishnu, and he took it. Now, on the second thing is on the mother's side, it shows that she has affection for him, a lot of affection, but she was also detached. She could see, I cannot help you. I cannot help you. And there's another answer. And it's quite interesting for, to understand, you know, what that is, how to love somebody and be detached if you cannot really have the answers to help them on everything, how to tell them, and not be possessive. We all have maybe different people, but some mothers are extremely possessive over their children, and even if they cannot help them, they want them there, and even if they're going to be struggling, they want them there. So that's not a very positive quality. So she really showed what it is to have affection but also be detached, to show like I can't help you. So Dhruva Maharaj leaves, and we know that he goes to seek answers, and he meets Narada Muni. Narada Muni gives him, first of all says, okay, I think you're taking this too seriously. It's just you're very young, so why? But he was determined. And so Narada Muni here, he gives him the instruction to chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya and meditate. So, and within a very short period of time, within 4 months, he reached the point of he met Vishnu, and he realized. So what I wanted to make a point is, he had material desires, and he approached and he took the path of bhakti to solve his material problem. He did not go to look for something better. He wanted to solve his material problem. So when he went to see Vishnu, or when he did see Vishnu, he realized that, after seeing Vishnu, and he realized that I asked for something extremely insignificant, when I've, it's like pieces of glass compared to what I could have got as diamond. And that's a very famous saying. But what I wanted to point across is, when he realized that he got what he wanted, in fact more than what he wanted, he got a pole star planet for himself to rule, that is in the Vaikuntha, and he's going to be ruling his father's kingdom for 36,000 years, and he's got more than he wanted. But it all became immaterial. It became, it's not important. He was totally regretting asking for that. So what happened to him is, we can see that he looked for his solution by practicing bhakti, but he managed to transcend his material problem. So it is not, like when we are having material problem, we are trying to deal with our material problem with a material solution, material problem with a material solution. But what bhakti yoga does is, you transcend the material problem and you're moving up vertically as well. And you by raising our consciousness, we find this material problem, it's not an issue. It's not it's not that the pain doesn't go away, but we have a different perspective of this understanding, and that gives us a certain strength to deal with it. And we know that he transcended the material problem, and his consciousness is so raised, that we can tell that, because when later on, now in the backstory, while he's away doing the meditation, Narada Muni goes to visit his father, and the father is extremely regretful, and he's feeling terrible that he didn't stand up for his son, and he's worried about him, and how he is in the forest. And so when Narada Muni said, don't worry, he's done very soon, they went to go and seek him out. They went with the mothers, both of them went and to go and greet him. and the whole entourage went to go and greet him. And we know from the story that Dhruva Maharaj paid his obeisances to both the mother. He had no more resentment towards his stepmother, and he was not upset with his father either. He was very, he had affection, but he was very detached from the whole situation he was in. Within a short period of time, his consciousness, when it got raised, he was not affected by the problem that he was in just a few months back. And when he got back to the kingdom, he the way he dealt, the father could see he's a changed man. He's not changed boy. He was still very young, so a changed boy. He's so enlightened and so capable that very shortly, with the advice of the ministers, they actually enthroned him to be the next king. And King Uttanapad left for the forest for his to seek self-realization himself, which is again is another interesting thing, because he didn't wait around to see if Dhruva Maharaj will get married and have his children. He wasn't, again, they're very they have very high understanding of their duties. So we can tell from Dhruva Maharaj's example, that his story, that what has happened when he is facing, he was having this anger. He approached his mother, and anger is an emotion. We all have anger. I mean, nobody can really escape anger, and we all act on emotions too. But what it has shown, that we should use our intelligence and act properly, and not just react. And when we have a problem with reacting, then we do things impulsively. That doesn't really work. So in this case, he was very fortunate that he had his mother to give him the right instruction. And so he acted on it correctly, and he got the result. And in the same way, we can see from the example which is what devotees are striving for. So when they are trying to spend time doing their yagyas, whether they are studying Prabhupada's books, or they are doing their japa, or they're doing deity worship, all the different kinds of yagyas, is because they want to raise their consciousness, so that when they are dealing with their material problems, they can rise above it. They can rise above it. They can deal. It's not like devotees don't face problems. Everybody does. But devotees are aiming to transcend it. And also, by transcending it, it's because by transcending it means transcending it. It is not so much that they sometimes we all have, whether it's a physical problem or anything, that it's a chronic, it's always there, say somebody who's suffering from diabetes, they have to watch their sugar intake, or give themselves their insulin shots, and to be constantly aware of their sugar problem. But if they, by raising their awareness, they don't need to make their whole life about their diabetes. It doesn't have to be all about the problem, or what they eat, when they eat, how they eat. They can have a normal life, and by transcend, they would have a normal life, and diabetes doesn't have to be the center of their attention all the time. It is something they live with, not live. They don't have to live in diabetic world. It's they live with the problem, and they move on. So this is what the yagya helps us. It really helps us to rise our consciousness. So that's why I wanted to go back. That's what when he is saying that in text 107, that it helps us to, by studying and reading, constantly learning, because this is transcendental. It is acting on a very spiritual. It is on a spiritual level. So it is something that we have to try to experience it. It's not easy to just say this is how it works, and you can measure that your spiritual temperature is rising by this much. It is not measurable, which is why it is quite hard for a lot of non-devotees to understand why do devotees try and do so much yagya. It is precisely for this reason, because whatever problems we are facing, we want to be able to transcend that and use it to approach Krishna, so much so that the problems we'll face would not affect us so much. That is not the only reason that they practice bhakti, but it is a byproduct. It really helps. So when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, by hearing submissively will free one's heart from all the faults of ignorance. Thus, one will achieve deep love for Krishna. So, once our heart is actually very much polluted. Our consciousness is very much polluted, which is why when we are having difficulties, we tend to look for the wrong answers, or we look elsewhere for the answers. So by constant purification through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, all the 9 processes, we will purify our heart so that when the ignorance is removed, we are more clearer on how to deal with everything. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that eventually we will have that deep love for Krishna. So I just wanted to address that point of how we cannot seek to solve our material problems with just material solutions. We need to look for spiritual solutions as well, because otherwise we are just going to hover on the material plane forever. And if we wanted to rise above that, we have to look for real answers. I think I will stop here. If there is any questions, can somebody check? But if there isn't, that is okay.
It doesn't look like there's any questions. Gunnar was just saying that
Can you read it for me?
in the Kirtan part, it just kept getting interrupted. There's no questions.
Okay, that's no question.
It was for us when we were watching outside. It was always getting interrupted.
Oh, is it? That's a shame.
Interrupted, and then
Anyway, forgive us if the telecast didn't really work properly, and thank you so much. Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai, and thank you for your time, for listening, and Hare Krishna.